Hi there, everybody. Oh man, it's been forever. It feels like months. Let me share my screen here. Hope you guys are doing okay. We went through that big mess around here, but we are good now. Let's see. All right. Done. Okay. So I posted today this thing here. You probably saw. Yeah, I posted on our group and everything. I've been working on this guy just like you guys are working on your own stuff. I have to do something as well. So I did a lot of work, as you can tell, with this guy here. I posted the other day the ZBrush version of it, right? Like he looks like this. And then there's some more work I did on top of that last one I posted with the detail and stuff. And I was thinking about, like, before we even start, to go through the stuff that I did while I was offline. So, you know, it's like, so I can actually explain the steps I took to get to this, you know, to where I am right now. And then you guys feel free to, you know, it's like normally I keep like the questions and answers for like the second hour. But I think today, because we missed this entire like last week, we can actually, you know, just talk, you know, and then try to get some of your questions out, because we have just this week. And then the next weekend, we're going to have the final reviews, right? So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is this. Let me just close this up for a second and bring back the, let's go to my Instagram here. Let's see, Instagram. And let's go to Joe's here. I think, not now. So this one is the link I show you guys, like at the very beginning when we were talking about, you know, likeness and references, right? Like, and I mentioned this guy here, Joe's Lock Bower. So basically, like, he has this collection, gigantic collection of scans that I mentioned before. And I think that's the best type of reference you can find for, you know, it's like the irregularities in the face. Because at this point, we are kind of like, we are too seduced with the whole thing about having the pores all perfect, right? And that's just the first step of everything, right? Is the first step is to get everything in place, like in terms of the pores and everything. But then on top of that, there's a lot that can be done with fine detailing and really running like a fine brush on top of everything and creating these irregularities. You know, it's like adding some bumps. There are certain bumps that, you know, it's like you're going to see they're small. Some of them are bigger. Some of them in here are actually part of the, you know, it's like the cast problems, right? Like you're going to see some noise in there that's part of the cast. But some of them are actually pimples and things like that, you know. So take a look at this guy's collection when you have the time. You're going to see some of them have more detail than others. But this kind of stuff, you know, it's like you see like this area here, like all those, you know, it's like the directional wrinkles going that way. There's some breakups and there's some acne marks in there. And then obviously there's this, you know, it's like hand sculpted parts in here of the makeup. But you know, there's so many things you can look in there to help you out to actually break up all the, you know, it's like that super smooth skin feel that I'm seeing some of you guys work. And I understand as well that some of you guys are just starting and trying to get the scale of the pores in place first, so it's totally okay. But just this is just a reminder, you know, like that, don't forget to actually push that extra step and try to incorporate some of the stuff you see in those references, you know, little bumps here and there. And then another thing is, like, I'm talking about the smaller bumps, right? But the best exercise you can do is blur your eyes when you look at something like this. And when you blur your eyes, you're going to see some bigger forms. Those ones around here and here, around another one in there. You know, it's like when you blur your eyes, you can really see them. They're going to pop the most, right? So those mid-resolution details are very important as well to break things up. So the way I explored in my model here was the way that I was talking to you guys in the past as well, which was to create a brush that you can actually go and cut things using like a lower resolution instead of like going to HD, right? Basically, like I have this brush here that is, I saved with the name Car5. And remember, like we were talking about, like that problem that ZBrush has when you have like the lazy mouse assigned to a brush, and then sometimes you sculpt it and then you hit like some funny angle, and then it shoots across the entire model and it's a mess, right? So for that reason, this brush here, I basically removed the lazy mouse. It's not there. And this is the brush I'm using for everything here. Like all those wrinkles, this additional pass of wrinkles that I did everywhere to add direction and everything. It was all done with this brush here. And also for the bigger forms, you see like there's some bigger forms carved in here, or some other in here. Basically I would go to a resolution like this, for example, which is like 2 subdivision levels for me. It's like only 277,000. And then really carve with it with a lower intensity. For example, like I'm using 19 for intensity when I'm carving like in HD for the small details. But around here, I'm using like something like 3 or 4 and going multiple times over the same spot. So for example, like if I'm gonna carve this area here, I'm gonna go multiple times. Oh, actually, I have carved this way. So carve multiple times. If I do like just with a strong brush so you can see what I'm doing, it's basically this, like multiple times, going over spots like that, and really incorporating these bigger forms, but with a low intensity brush. So for example, like from a distance like that, I can actually go here and incorporate some stuff like in the cheeks, for example, add some, you can see what I did right there. So for example, around here as well, some like bigger stuff, like bigger forms, like it's more like the secondary forms instead of the tertiary forms, all incorporated before HD, right? This stuff really helps to add the secondary layer of complexity to the model, you know? And obviously, I mean, like if you're working a young model, you're probably not gonna see a lot of this. Like with older model, definitely gonna see it, but you still can explore that in certain areas, you know, it's like to introduce some secondary form, even like in younger models, as long as you're careful, right? Like how much you can incorporate of that. So basically what I did for the entire model, including like the forehead in here, you see like those areas here, they're like, I dug them a little deeper. Around here, the foreheads, the eyebrows, same thing. Introducing like the secondary forms, even later in the game, even after we have all the tertiary stuff, you know, so just go to a lower resolution and really crank the secondary forms again, you know. All those things help to actually break that plasticky feel. And then combine it with, obviously, like you can introduce like bigger bumps and bruises and things like that. So let's talk about like the finer stuff that I did here. Let's go to HD for this guy. I think like in some of your models, what's missing is this, you know, it's like it's a pass to incorporate more of the secondary forms, and another one to actually incorporate direction to your, you know, and more interesting detail to the fine stuff, especially for you guys like modeling like older guys. So let's check this thing out. Okay, we are all HD here. Let's turn this thing around. So let's take a look here, for example. Like you see that the pores, when, as I mentioned before, it was just the first step, right? So I have the pores, but look at all those wrinkles around here. Like I said, like if you're modeling like someone younger, you're probably not gonna go that crazy with this stuff, right? But you still have room for it. So if I crank back to my 19 intensity here, just look at the profile. It's basically like it's the alpha. I believe this one, it's funny that you cannot see the alpha here, but I believe this one is smaller than the 39 actually. It might be something like 47, something like that. You have to do a little test, but my profile looks like this. Modify. So it's very sharp. There's a curvature like that. Contrast, I think is the same. Intensity, yeah, I think everything here is default, other than this very sharp line, no lazy mouse, and then a very tiny brush in there. I believe it must be one of those like 40s, the 40s here. Probably not 39 because it's a little big. And then what I'm doing with it, I'm going like everywhere I can find, you know, areas that I can actually incorporate some direction. And I'm gonna carve around here so you can see what I'm doing around here. And just like go to that game of connecting dots again, you know, trying to find those spots where I can add some direction to it. And another thing I did was actually to create a copy of this brush that I use for the pores. And then I actually exported the alpha to Photoshop, and I stretched it. So I have like a stretched pore now that I can use to add some more direction as well. But you see like this type of detail here is the kind of stuff that breaks that pattern that we had before with the pores, right? Because I mean, like the pores are very cool to see them just like in pure form, but then they need to be, you know, more complex overall. So even here, I mean, like those guys here, they're too close to the lips. I'm probably gonna have to smooth them out a little bit. But everywhere I had detail before, I just push one step further. Even the lips in here, remember like I add some of the wrinkles? I just went there and I added more of them, kind of like trying to generate this stretch coming from the sides in here. So I kind of like start pulling them that direction. And from here as well, just adding some more in there so you can see. And always using this tiny little brush, you know, it's like, as long as you don't carve too fast, if you're slow enough to carve, you don't need a lazy mouse, you know, and that's going to prevent the shooting across the model. That's pretty ridiculous. Here, it's that pass that we did like live, right? Remember, like I had that directional using the random brush, right? That this little guy, where is it? The scan, pores random, this one, right? So basically like a small version of it, just like really brushing across the entire surface and adding this detail, like this direction in there. So that combined with this guy here to introduce some of the bigger ones, right? And you can really find like spots for everything here. You can go to town, right? Like there's no limit for the amount of detail you want to add to your model. Just like, obviously, like I like the detailing part, but it's because it's fitting my model, right? I have an excuse with this model because in the past I was modeling like all those old people, so I had an excuse. But then now I was like, okay, let's go do some ethnicity, right? But then because this guy is kind of like the type of skin that's basically like cooked in the sun, like for, you know, staying in the sun for so long, he probably has like a premature aged skin, right? So that's my excuse, basically like having someone who is not quite that old, but skin is pretty beat up because of the constant sun, right? So yeah, I can consider the guy like he's, you know, it's like maybe like 50s, early 60s, but, you know, pretty beat up. So I have an excuse to add all those wrinkles here. Another thing I did, for example, the nose, I started going too bumpy with it. And then when I was rendering, it was getting like the reflection and the little, you know, highlights getting like super broken up. And I didn't like that. So what I did, I actually went like 2 subdivision levels lower than what I had. It smoothed everything out. So when I came back, it was looking a little bit more smooth. So that's basically what I have in terms of detail. The detail I had on the side of the nose here, you see like I'm gonna even like do some smoothing here. This side looks better. This one looks a little crunchy now. So basically that's what I do when I need that. I go back like 1 or 2 subdivision levels and I just smooth it out carefully, right? Don't go too crazy. I'm gonna smooth it out here just to remove like the extra crunchiness. And then I'm gonna go back here. I should get the detail back, but without the major stuff. Let's see, going back. I can even smooth at this level here a little bit, just because it's still a little crunchy. And I'm gonna go back 1 time. And that's about it. So that's basically what I want there. And then for this entire area here of the, you know, the connection between the eye bags and the rest of the skin in here, it's that careful, you know, it's like carefully connecting that structure here without any pores, don't put any pores in there, to this area that has pores, starting with very, you know, shallow ones and then getting deeper and deeper around this area here. And like I said before, like the amount of detail, you're gonna be the ones putting the limit, right? Because you can go to town and have like, you can spend like 6 months on a face if you want, like really put detail in there, you know. And it's just a matter of like how far you want to push it. That's all it is at the end of the day. So basically, that's what I did for the entire face. You know, it's like it's adding all this extra layer of all those wrinkles here running across. You know, and so it's like it was 2 passes. One was this fine layer of wrinkles, and the other one was that bigger layer of wrinkles or secondary forms in a lower resolution of the model, you know, just to, you know, to create this kind of like, if you look from a distance, there's some bigger bumps that you can see, or secondary forms, they were not there before, and they really help to sell the idea that the skin is not that regular anymore, you know. And there's still room. I mean, like you see, like those ones here, for example, they still look a little, there's a little pattern in there, but I can keep going with it, you know, it's like go on top of them and add more and more connecting points for those wrinkles, you know. Make sure that you look at your reference. You're gonna notice, for example, around the nose, you're gonna get like some of them flaring out like that in different directions, right? It's starting to fold around here. So all this stuff, and then you can do some crisscrossing as well, just to break the overall, you know, look of the pores. And if you have an area like this and you want to add some stretch, you can go, for example, on top of the wrinkles, and you can just like sculpt a little line on top of each one of them like that, and you create this little look that looks like stretched like that. You know, it's like depending on the direction you want to go with. So you can do that, or you can use that little brush I told you. You know, it's like you can just grab the alpha and create another brush, just like with the stretched pore. You know, there's a video actually making off of me sculpting Kong, the King Kong, like for Skull Island, and I think it's on YouTube. You can. It's basically what I'm doing in that video is doing exactly this. You know, it's like exaggerating the direction of the pores to get that little stretch feeling, but obviously like spending a good chunk of time in there. So it looked like it was more convincing than this. But yeah, so that's basically like what I spend time doing, other than obviously tweaking the overall shape of the face. Because, you know, like I said, like I'm still chasing the character, right? And now that I have some renders here, it's starting to look alive. But there's a lot of stuff I did. I mean, like I started with the eyes too closed before, because I was going for that stylized super long face, and it was just not working, you know. I could not make it work. So I decided to go for like a little bit more, a little bit less stylized, a little bit more of a normal proportion, at least like in this area here, as eye, nose, and mouth. And then later on, if I want to exaggerate, I can create like a, you know, a more cartoonish version or a stylized version. But for now, it looks a little bit more like this. So that's the thing I did. Like for the wrinkles of the forehead, I started adding some, you know, it's like I added the main ones, but I started adding those smaller ones going horizontally and following the same structure. Because when you look, like when you have expression, you're gonna see there's a lot of micro ones going across. So for example, if I do some sculpting here, you're gonna see like it's just a pass, just to introduce more and more lines to actually echo that. And then from time to time, from this main lines in here, you can actually break them. Obviously, like, you know, using reference is always good. In my case here, I'm actually making up a lot of stuff, so kind of like not that concerned, but yeah, and try to avoid what I just did, which actually create that echo, right? Like I have this line going this direction, another one looks similar. If I put another one right here, right, it's basically going to be a 1, 2, 3, so that's not good. So, and then I have all those lines going vertically, vertically as well. So for example, from here, I can actually pull them going down and then go almost like towards this compression happening around here, right, of the furrow. So I can do all of that stuff. And again, like always based on the reference, but just like as a visual reference in terms of what's necessary if you're sculpting like an older guy, I'm still gonna work more on this, but that's kind of like the ballpark, you know. It's like you have the wrinkles, you have the pores and everything, but everything starts mixing together, you know. That's kind of like what's missing in a lot of the works I'm seeing. Like it's just go to town with those little micro wrinkles to actually make things integrate with each other, you know. And then obviously if it's a very old person, probably the pores, like we mentioned before, they're gonna start kind of like getting shallower and shallower and almost like disappearing as well, right? So it's all a matter of like how you're gonna approach it. Okay, so let's talk about the shader stuff. The shader stuff, I'm not what I'm doing here is just like doing an upgrade of what I did during this week that we didn't talk, and I was doing just modeling right after the blackout for us here. And so we kind of like reset the button, and then you can go back to doing the grooming that we need to do today. But I want to upgrade you guys a little bit. So for example, the renders I posted today, they look like this, right? But there's something about the skin that I noticed like that was happening with the skin before, the skin that I was using like in the past classes and everything. It wasn't quite working for this guy, and I think it's because of the tone of the skin. I'm not sure, you know. It was just looking a little bit too metallic for me. And so what I did, I actually reversed, if you remember correctly, I was using the specular with a very, very low number So it was very, very shiny, right, for the spec. And then I had the coat doing the secondary specular, that was the broad one. So, what I did with this skin here, I actually reversed it. So I'm using like the broad one is actually the specular itself. And then the coat is actually adding the what would be the oily pass, right? And it gave me slightly the same result, but a little bit better than what it was before. But there's still a little reminiscent, you know, it's like a reminiscent kind of like a metallic feel to it, and I don't like it. I think it's too oily around this area here, so I'm probably gonna have to bring it down a little bit. I like what's happening here around the eye, so I like that it's you know, it's like wet enough in there. I could go a little bit more wet around this area here, but I think around here is too wet. So basically, like what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have to level my specular map, right? That's what's important. Why it's important to render your stuff at all times, to be able to see those things, you know, to start the fine-tuning part of things, right? The only way to see what's missing is just like doing renders and renders. It's just like it's a painful part because it takes forever, right? Like it took me the whole day to render like those 6-7 images, you know, at 1,000 by 1,000. So, but that's what I need to do, you know. It's like now I have those ones as a reference. I can know, you know, it's like how much I can bring down. I did a pass on the stubble yesterday, which is very cheap version of it, right? It looks very regular, and I don't have a mask. So at this point here is just like selection of faces, right? With a nice mask, I can actually filter out some of those guys here. And this is gonna be like a density mask. I can show you guys how to paint this probably tomorrow. And then I can actually do a better job than what I have in here. And then, so what I did here was something that I was mentioning to Miha last time, which was basically like I did you know, I select a bunch of faces, assign the new hair in there, and then I needed to open this mask, otherwise we are always locked to the selection of the faces, right? But I needed to unlock it because I wanted to put the in-betweens, like those random ones in here, right? So what I did was that trick, you know, it's like I exported by using the this one here, for example. Like I have the stubble. So you go to descriptions and you say preset export, right? That's what we did in all of our previous classes. So then I exported, deleted the one that was in there, and then re-imported it. So when I re-imported it, then now it basically unlocked that that area that I had selected before. And now I can actually place by hand by using this guy here, the place tool. Just place by hand by using the interpolation. So basically like click interpolation in there, and then you can just like place all those guys. You can even do it here. We just have to remember to just go to edit, right? Turn it on and click that, so edit. And then now I can just turn off my symmetry. And then around here, I can add more of those guys one by one like that, right? Add a bunch of them. So it's not locked to that the face selection anymore because I actually re-imported it. And when you do that, you select the entire object instead of just a few faces, and then it's basically unlocked, right? For the peach fuzz, as you can tell, I did more brushing, directional brushing, but around the edges in here, they're still too simple, you know? I have to add more bend, kind of like bring them down a little bit. I can add more variation for the length as well. I start adding that. There are a bunch of different ways you can do that. For example, like my peach fuzz here, if you look, I have my scale node. And then in the scale node, I have the scale. I plug the noise from Maya here, right? And the noise, actually, I did what I did before with you guys. I switch like from billow to purling noise, and then it's easier to control in here. And I have a frequency of 100 here. But I can potentially use a much higher number, for example, like 500. And then I can play with this threshold here. And you're gonna see there the changes of the size of the hair, right? It's changing sizes. And then I have the amplitude in here as well. The ratio, all this stuff here can give you like different results, right? What I have at this point here, I think I need some more variation of the sizes. So I can do that, and I can even use the scale itself. Let's see, scale. There is a mask here. Actually, what I did here was dumb because I plugged in the scale instead of the mask. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna just reverse it now. So let's do this. Peach fuzz. Let's get the materials here. Let's grab that. So I have my peach fuzz in here. And let's see what's plugged in there. Actually, this guy here. Which one is, oh, the scale. Okay. So let's see, select. Let's see if I can graph this part. Oh, I actually can. But the scale is in there. So let's see if I find this map here. Let's see if I just click this. If I can just go in and out. Let's see, graph, input and output. No. Okay, I can just plug it again. It would be easier if I can find that map. Let's see, what's the name of that map? Let's see, Peach Fuzz. That's called under scale. Where is it? Scale. So that one is called Noise 7. Let's put a name that I can know what it is. Noise Cease. Very easy to remember. CCC. Okay, let's try that. So let's see under textures here if I can find a noise. Whoa, it's a lot of stuff here. Noise CCC, this guy here, right? So let's plug it. So it's gonna be easy for me to find now. So let's go to scale. Where is it? This one. And then I have, go back one time. I'm gonna plug this guy here. Noise CCC. Mid mouse click. I'm gonna click and drag it all the way here. So now it's plugged in there. I'm gonna remove this one. Break connection. So right click and then click break connection basically. So now it's affecting the mask instead of affecting the scale. With that, I can actually play with the scale and I can actually grow the entire thing if I need to, right? And I still have the mask in there. Yeah, so even if I bring all the way down, I still get some of them longer. That's good. So I can play with that later. But that's basically what I did, you know, it's like with the Peach Fuzz. We're gonna do a couple of things today with the Peach Fuzz. For example, like around the lips in here, you see like I have some longer ones. And the way I did that was actually just creating a sculpt layer, right? Just edit. And then you can just go with your length brush and just like start painting some more length to it. So around here, just like slightly growing them. So I did a little bit of that. I did a little bit around this area here too. And you can actually lock as well, right? Like you can do like a maximum length of like 100 and, for example, I have 0.14 here. If I put like 0.160, then I can actually grow those guys a little bit more around here without going too crazy, right? It always locks into a place. For example, like if I wanna go like all the way to 400, now those guys gonna keep growing all the way to 400, right? In my case here. So it's cool to have this control of minimum and maximum because you can always keep, for example, like, okay, the minimum length of the Peach Fuzz is gonna be this, but the maximum gonna be this, and actually keeps kind of like normal, natural within those parameters, right? So that was the second pass. And then the thing that we're gonna be doing, I started doing here, which was growing basically like those guys here. The length is a little longer than the rest, close to the eyebrows. And I used it a lot, you know, it's like I blend the Peach Fuzz that comes from the forehead into the eyebrows. So you get this nice Peach Fuzz that's slightly longer, close to the eyebrows. Same for the hairline, you know, it's like around the hairline here, you can use the Peach Fuzz pass to actually just make everything longer. And then you can actually, you know, blend into the hair. And if you want to make them blend even better, you can make them slightly thicker as well. So you can paint the thickness as well, interactively, and just add that as well. But this is gonna be like a later pass. So for the skin, let's just do a little quick review here of the skin, because at this point it looks very different, for example, like from the white skin that we are working on before, right? But we can go like through the entire thing. That takes a long time, right? Like to break down the entire thing. But I think I'm gonna go like just the stuff I changed here that I remember. So like I said, the specular before was very small, was 0.120 here. So I actually made this one broad, like the regular spec, to 0.3. And then I have my specular mapping there. And the width, I basically brought down from 800, I believe, to 670. And then for the coat, I did the reverse. So I put 120 here for the coat. And then for the color of the coat, I actually add slightly bluish, very slightly. So if it was white in here, right, you can actually go towards blue. You can just incorporate a little bit of it. I think I went too far, just a little bit. Obviously, you know, it's like you get a lot of the blue from the sky if you're doing like outdoors and stuff. So it might be overkill here, but it actually works nice. I like that adds a little bit of more of like a cool kind of spec to the entire thing. And for the map itself, I think I had this one cranked all the way in the color balance, because remember, like we are using alpha as luminance because it's a black and white map, right? And in the past, I had this exposure cranked pretty much all the way. And then the alpha gain was like at 1 or something. So I'm using just a very minor intensity. So basically, like I'm using like 14% of the original value that I had before, right? Because I just want that little bit of spec that's very sharp, a very sharp spec, but it's also not very intense. What I want to achieve with that is that when you look from close up, like this one here, right? You can see those tiny specks in between stuff, but without like overtaking the rest of the spec. You know, I want really like as a secondary spec that I can read just like in extreme close-ups, even closer than this. You know, I can see the tiny specks. It looks like everything is very plasticky looking. But then as you go further, right, it starts to look a little bit more solid. So that's kind of like the intention there. I think that in terms of changes for this, oh, there's another thing that I have to talk to you guys about. Remember that I was using a node in here. Let's just open this one. This is an experiment. I mean, like every single class, I try different things, different approaches, you know, and I explore with you guys because, you know, every new model is a different set of challenges, right? So all those classes, they're very similar, you know, because it's, the bulk of everything is the same, but each model has a different set of challenges, and I try different things. And so, you know, it's like I try to give you guys the ballpark of what I'm using, but it's completely open for exploration, you know, it's like from me or from you guys as well. So what I did, check this out. So I had my Maya, and I had, let's see what I used before. It was Maya utilities. So before, remember, I was using this guy here, which was the remap color, right? Remember I was using remap color, and then remap color, we had like the red, green, and blue, and we're actually cranking the blue up and bringing the red down a little bit, keeping the green kind of untouched, right? And I decided, like, you know what? Instead of using this color map here, I'm gonna plug another map. So what I did, I plugged this map here, which is also from Maya, and it's called color correction, color correct, this guy here. So the difference is that in this one here, we have the red, green, blue, right? And we also have like, obviously like the maximum output, so you can actually reduce and everything. But the color correct has some interesting stuff, you know, it's like I can shift the hue, because before he was looking too red skin, and I want to get a little bit more of the olive brownish skin. So I actually used the hue to actually shift very slightly. I actually brought the saturation down, if I remember correct. Let's just look at the shader itself so we can look at what I have in terms of setting. So instead of plugging the mapping here in the subsurface color, I plugged this color correct node from Maya, right? It's not an Arnold. It's under utilities for Maya, and then it's called color correct. That's basically it. So you plug in your subsurface color, and then in that, under coloring here, you're gonna plug your maps. So I have my color maps plugged in here, right? Head, blah, blah, blah. But the settings, you see, like I shifted the hue in here a little bit more towards yellow. And then the saturation, I brought it down. The value is the base, like the overall amount that's basically affecting the model. So if you bring this down, it's basically gonna turn the model darker and darker. So you can go like really dark skin with that. And then you can even shift the color. For example, like I have color gaining here, and you can tell I made it a little bit cooler. It was looking a little bit too warm. So I had like 0.083, you know, of blue just to colorize it a little bit more. And then everything else was the same, you know. But it's a very interesting node. I thought I had more control in a way using this one. So again, as an option, you know, it's like you can either use one or the other one. But I think this one you're going to have more control if you're trying to achieve those very different types of skin color, you know, instead of having to repaint everything in ZBrush. So
Hey,
basically, like,
Chris,
yes,
can I ask a question?
yes, you can.
Okay. Oh yeah. What is your subsurface scale?
Oh, the scale. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's another thing. We had like we were using before 135, I believe, for the other skin shader. For this guy here, for whatever reason, I was not showing the was not seeing the effect, so I had to crank it all the way to 170 here. And I'm gonna tell you that it looks a little hot in certain areas. You know, it's still a little bit too red in certain areas, but I think with the color correction I did, it brought down a little bit. But you still see in the ear there's a little bit hot. You know, it's like it's a little bit too red in certain areas. But I'm gonna keep like playing with it. I kind of like this one here though. Like the eyelid looks okay in there. But yeah, it's like I cranked from 135 to 170. So that's basically what I did. Oh, and there was more like I had more front scatter before, and that one I just reset to the default 0 here. For the pale skin, I was getting more success by bringing this down and getting more of a front scatter and having the scale smaller. But for this guy, for whatever reason, it's being a challenge to get his skin to look correct. So yeah, that's the change I made. So before we go and we dig into we're gonna be doing some eyebrows today, and then if we have the time, like some nose hair as well, which is basically gonna be the same approach I did for the stubble. Basically, I can give you the settings for the stubble as well. I think it's a little bit thin right now and too dense. I think gonna make less dense and thicker, but I can give you the settings, at least the ballpark. But before we go ahead with the eyebrow stuff. You guys have any questions about the stuff I did like in the past couple of days? I mean, like anything here that that you saw that was like, okay, you didn't mention anything about this during the classes. You can ask me. I can just go and explain everything I can. If you see anything like in the renders or it's like in the model itself, because I want to make sure you guys are in a good spot. It's like to keep going with your models. I know that the biggest challenge so far is being the scale of the pores, right? Like to get it correctly, so they're not too spread out, too big or whatever. And that's like, oh, man, it's hard for me to tell you what's the correct one, because you're gonna have to look at the reference here. It's like if you can find like pictures of the person you're trying to sculpt, or if you're sculpting yourself like a mirror, and really maybe like select a small area of your cheek, for example, and even like take a picture like with your phone and do what I did like in one of the first classes, right? Like basically like bring to Photoshop and with create another layer in Photoshop, and with a little brush you can just paint and count those pores in a small area so you can have an idea about the density that's necessary in there, But it's hard for me to tell you, like I just go by feeling, right? Like I look and I was like, okay, it looks too deep, or it looks too deep and too spread out, or it looks like too deep, too spread out, and maybe like needs more in between detail, right? But it's you see, like over time, my model went from having very deep pores to having slightly shallower pores, combined with all those micro wrinkles on top. Everything evolves, It's like you start with a simple pass, and then you have to keep working on it, or else it gets like this very mechanical look, just the pores, which I still have in some areas here. Like I think the side of the face looks, let's see if it renders in here. Yeah, around here, you see like those guys are very mechanical here. So I'm gonna have to extend those micro wrinkles and try to create some more interesting stuff. And try to understand the wrinkles as waves, right? This one's a weird one right here. I have to correct it. It looks like a warrant. But try to understand as waves, right? Like everything has movement in here. And it's like basically like all this stuff is a combination of baked movement over many years, right? Like it's this movement creating all those waves, compressing things and stretching things, and then marking the skin for good, right? So basically, like if I look at this as waves, there are those waves here coming from the sides of the eyes, creating those big waves in here. They're starting to echo around here, but then there's a collision happening around here. So there's some other waves coming from around the ear. So I have like those wrinkles coming here, which I have to exaggerate some more. And then around here, I can echo those guys and start like actually colliding with those other waves in here and create some interesting crisscrossing happening around there, right? So like, yeah, always like try to interpret the skin as something that's in movement, right? Because that's what it is. Like things gonna stretch and shrink and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you guys don't have questions, I can just go ahead with the with the grooming. But it's up to you guys. I mean, I'm here for you. It's our last week with this whole craziness. Oh, and I'm glad that Leo, you actually fixed your stuff, right? Like the transparency in your cornea
Yeah, I did. So in the end was
too close.
I had the iris almost like mirroring the cornea.
Was too close.
Yeah, it was too close, and then I think the SSS was just picking it up. So as soon as like I pulled it back, then it just behaved normally. But it took me a while to understand.
Yeah, I could not figure it out because it was like, okay, I'm gonna try to reproduce here, and I tried. I was like, man, it's not working. I don't know what's going on, and I thought it was like in the past, Maya had a problem. For example, like if you have a transparency map, and even if you crank between black and white, full black and full white, the transparency was still like not completely transparent. So it's almost like you had to crank instead of 1, you had to use like 1.5 and exaggerate the white, and you would make transparent. So I thought it could be something like that, but I'm glad you figured it out.
Yeah, no, I tried both ramps. Sometimes the Arnold one wouldn't work, or sometimes it wouldn't refresh, or like all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think it's moving forward.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm doing actually what you did today, showing that's exactly what I was doing now, like creating the uneveness in the skin.
Yes, exactly.
And the micro little the blending and that stuff, which is just like I did a pass and then I tested and I was like, fuck, can't see anything. And then just trying to go heavier and heavier a little bit in testing.
Yes.
And also I tried that script that Mohammed put it, that you can accentuate the detail.
Oh yeah.
It's actually quite cool. Yeah, it weirdly enough it works, and it works its best on heavier meshes.
That's so weird.
Yeah, if it's dense, then you'll pretty much emphasize more of that detail. If it's not as dense, you'll give a little bit more volume that you actually wanted to.
But what happens with HD geometry?
Yeah, no, it works perfectly.
That's awesome.
What it does is, like, apparently, as far as I understood, it creates a morph target, and then from that morph target, the brush works from there. And then but yeah, in Geometry HD it works great, and I feel like outside of HD it adds a little bit more volume that I would think it would.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I've found. But yeah, it's cool. It's worth it. So like for the pores, that I thought that I had, like, I went a little bit light on some of them. I went with that over it, and it pretty much did the job.
Is it a free script?
Yeah, it's free. It's called Ryan's.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put in there in that page, like the resource page, like in every single class, I'm gonna put the link there, and make that available for people. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. The guy does a little video. There's like more stuff. It's not just the brush. Like he has like a bunch of tools.
Yeah.
But the coolest part is that brush.
Yeah, gonna give the guy a link in there. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Another thing that I did here, it was like, you see, like I did a couple of tricks here with the renders, right? Before you go ahead, I mean, like I really want to get into the guides and the grooming stuff, but at the same time, I need to update you guys in all this stuff, right? So you're gonna notice here for my lighting, I was testing a bunch of HDRIs, right? And then there are times that you experimenting with HDRIs. I got this one here. That's let's see, which everything is from HDRI Haven, by the way, right? And I strongly encourage you guys to donate to them, not because I have any relationship with the guys, because I don't. But what I did, I donated $3 a month, kind of like a Patreon thing that they have going on. And $3 a month is $30 a year, right? It's nothing for like all these awesome HDRIs they have. And when you give them any money, they actually give you access to the Google Drive that they have with the entire collection available for download. So basically, like what you can do, like Google Drive is a little sucky because if you try to select everything, Google Drive is going to try to zip everything, and it's going to be very hard to download. But if you do by ladder, for example, like download like A and B, you can download all the maps starting with A and B, and then you do the next 2 or 3, right? And I got like a ton of maps, like, and I'm doing everything in 4K, nothing bigger than 4K. So this map here is called, just in case if you want to check it out, it's called Abandoned Slipway 4K. So I used this one, right? And I thought the lighting was really cool, but I didn't quite like the reflection. I think the lighting was cool, but the reflection wasn't too cool. Or let me see if that's the correct thing that I'm doing here, or it's the vice versa. Let's see. Yeah, this is basically the main source of light. So this basically I'm using intensity 3 to get the lighting for this guy, using this map, right? But check this thing out. So intensity 3, if I go, oh, actually this one is the one creating the specular, okay? So that's not the main light. So I'm using intensity 3, and then if you scroll down all the way down here, you see like the camera, basically like it's not visible to the camera. That's why you don't see this in my renders. Transmission is off, everything is off. The only thing on is specular. So the only thing I'm getting from this image is the specular. So we can do this type of cheat, you know? Sometimes you find an HDRI that looks very cool and it's giving this beautiful lighting, but then the reflections are not good enough. Some people just add like some area lights to create some, you know, but some reflections. But if you have something that's like an environment, like an outdoors, it would be nice to have an outdoors kind of like reflection that looks nice. So like broken up horizon stuff instead of like having like simply a soft box, right? So that's what I did. So I'm using this one here to generate this spec. And then there's another HDRI here, which is the one creating the outdoors forest, this one. That's the one you can see in the renders here, right? Outdoors forest. And this one here, what I have for it in terms of the, let's see the name of the map first. This one is called Woods 4K. It looks like this. And there's an extra cheat here, right? You see like, instead of like using completely horizontal, I actually basically like pulled it up around here. So I get a little bit more of a top light, right? Which is, you know, it's like, it's not something that you're gonna be doing all the time, especially like if you're doing a render for animation or something. But for our still in here, I kind of like the weirdness of the slightly diagonal stuff in the background, right? And also because I'm getting this nice shadow underneath the eyebrows, because before the light was too frontal, was hitting him right in the face, and I was losing all the, you know, it's like the forms in the, so basically like I did that little trick in there. And then, so that's Woods 4K. And then I'm using intensity 2 for this guy. And then this one has, let's see, the camera. I'm reducing a little bit of the camera visibility to like from 1 to 0.4 because I wanted on purpose this slightly darker feel to it. You know, it's almost like when you're using a regular camera, right? Like you get the exposure of the camera, like the meter, to actually evaluate what's in the middle of the camera, depending on the setting you have, right? So you're gonna get the face completely perfectly exposed, but then the background sometimes gonna go a little darker, right? That's what happens with the flashlight, for example. So I wanted that effect. That's why on purpose I actually reduced this to 0.4, but everything else is affecting everything. So subsurface, indirect, all this stuff. So that's the first thing I did for my renders, is to use 2 HDRIs, one just for spec, right? And the second trick I used here is this, let's see, panel, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I wasn't the right one. Just I saved everything as keyframe. The second one is this one here. So if you click view, select camera, and you go all the way down in the second tab, perspective camera, perspective shape, and you go all the way down to your Arnold tab. So here I actually added some depth of field, right? And then the depth of field, basically what I do is this. If I go to the settings, this little icon here, and I go to settings again. So basically I'm using centimeters for the, you know, after I already measured the head and we did everything in inches, I switched centimeters because it's easier for me to, you know, I was raised in Brazil, so centimeters. And then once I have that in place, then I can actually measure, for example, the distance here. What I do when I want to measure the distance is this. I go to my display and then heads up in display, and I click the poly count, not poly count, sorry, object details, right? And then there's another one that's the camera, let's see. Which one is that? I think that's it. I think it's object details. Yeah, that's it. So display object details. And that one brings up like the distance from camera that shows that little number in there, right? So if I want to see, for example, the distance from the camera, I want to actually have the focus always on the iris, right? So if I click the iris itself, as long as I have it center in the iris, my pivot, right? Now I have an idea about the position of the iris, which is like 57.644. That's the number I have for the focus, right? So one thing you can do if you want to actually, if you don't want to mess up, for example, like if I click this, the iris, but then now I switch to the camera, right? All of a sudden I'm gonna miss that because you're gonna switch to the camera. So if I do this, view, select camera, now I lost that number that I had before. So in order to see it, you can do this. You can select the iris and you can just say, actually you can go here, select camera first, and you can just do like a copy tab, this one. So it's a duplicate of it. And now I can select my, my iris, right there. And now I can just go here, and I don't need to select the camera because it's already here. And I can just tweak this. Or I open Arnold, and I go here, and I'm gonna see like 57.644. I'm gonna input that number in there. I'm gonna right click right here, and I'm gonna say set key, right? So I create a keyframe for it. And this keyframe is gonna be matching the camera keyframe. So at all times, I'm gonna be doing like select camera and press S, like Sam, right? And I create a keyframe in here. So basically now I have a keyframe for the camera position and another one for the focus distance. I can also create one for the aperture size. The smaller I go, the less focus, defocus I'm gonna get, right? So at 0.200, it gets defocus slightly in the ears and then the background definitely, but still see, you can see a lot of stuff in the nose. But if you start going like towards 1, for example, then everything starts getting super blurry, including the tip of the nose, right? So basically what I did for the aperture size, I don't need to create a keyframe for each one of the frames, because what I wanted, all of those are similar in terms of the distance to the camera, just different positions, right? So I actually kept all of them at 0.200. So I create the keyframe just in the last one. And then for this guy here, since it's so close, I switched to 0 because I want to see all the details, right? And then the depth of field I have applied in my render here is actually post. So basically, like this is all post, right? It's an artificial kind of blur that I have applied using my go-to plugin, which is the alien skin one that I showed you guys before, exposure, right? There's some color correction in there and all that stuff. So those are the things I did like for the depth of field, right? Everything's in the manual. In that website I point you guys to. And another thing I did was this one here. So there is this little effect here that's pretty cool. You can, there's a filter map you can plug, for example, ramp. So I plugged like a Maya ramp in here, and it's very sensitive. So basically like this one, if you have all the way black like this, right? It's gonna create a vignette that's very, very dark. So I tried to keep like almost like halfway, and the middle point, instead of like all the way here, I tried to bring a little bit higher. So the vignetting is just like around the borders. So obviously this is super easy to do in post. You don't need to do it here, but it's just to show you guys that you have the options. If you want to render, for example, a full turntable that's with a vignetting effect, you know, you can actually do this in here by just plugging a ramp in there. But yeah, those are the things I did in terms of render, right? And let's jump to this grooming now. Let's do a little bit more grooming. We last week we did the simple stuff, right? Still gonna be kind of simple. It's gonna be similar to what we did with the eyelashes, meaning we're gonna do, the eyelash still needs some work. There is still a little bit. Look at that from the bottom. There are two.
Okay, Chris.
Yes. Oh.
Before we start with the grooming,
yeah, yep.
I was wanting to know that I was having troubles with the double mesh of the cornea.
Double mesh.
I was having like a double specular reflection
Uh-huh.
when I try to use it,
Uh-huh.
and I only can make it work with only one
One side.
single. Yeah.
Yeah, one side.
What's
I I think I switched this one back to one side too, because I was like for Jessica, I think what I did, I had some stuff in there that was actually turning off one of the sides. I don't remember what I did exactly. But for this guy here, as you can tell, look at this. I actually removed that guy. So he's back to my old setup. That's just the cornea and the iris. So yeah,
Okay.
that's why I show you guys like both, because one might work better than the other one. I have to kind of like go back to the one I did for Jessica and see how I set it up for the two sides, because it was definitely working, but I probably made some change in there to compensate for the double reflection for sure. Yeah, but
okay, thank you.
yeah, this one works great, man. I mean, like it really, I don't think you need more than that, you know, but yeah, I can definitely try to bug track that one. But yeah, it really works nice, you know. Oh, and I made his eyes a little bit more yellow. That was another question from Leo, you know, the color of the eyes. We can actually get to this, save this for tomorrow, and we can open the maps I have. They're very simple. And I always use like color correction nodes to just like, you know, kind of like tweak things. And in his case, it was much more yellow before and actually brought a little bit more white yesterday, but it's just like using color correction nodes. It's super simple map, but yeah, definitely we can take a look tomorrow. So let's do a little grooming today. So let's turn off some stuff here. Let's turn off the other stuff. And the thing that I'm gonna do as a disclaimer here is that I'm gonna try to give you guys like the roadmap to crashes with XGen. Because with even ZBrush, you know, it's like if you're using ZBrush for a long time, you know that there are certain things you cannot quite trust that's going to do correctly, because it's more likely it's going to give some kind of crash or corrupt the scene. And then one of them is the one I mentioned today, right? Like you're sculpting with something with lazy mouse, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's like can screw your model. And if you didn't see it, because if that thing was kind of subtle, and you didn't see, you keep sculpting for another hour, you know, and then all of a sudden you go back and I was like, holy shit, there's this whole line in here, and now I have to fix it, right? It's pretty annoying. But with XGen, what happens is that there is a problem that I noticed with the display itself. So what happens is that sometimes you sculpt, this is a very important one for you guys to keep in mind, okay? Among other things, I'm gonna tell you in the next couple of days about XGen. But one of the main ones for me is this. You're sculpting something, and then all of a sudden, after like not like immediately, because you can, if you just open like a brand new scene, a Maya scene, and just load your scene in, you should be fine, you know, it's like for a while. But then after hours working on the same model with lots of XGen switching tools and things like that, things start getting a little flaky, you know, and then all of a sudden things don't respond anymore. So what I noticed a couple of times is that I was working on something, and then I was like, okay, so my tools stopped responding. So I was trying to brush something, and it was not doing anything. And I checked my intensity, everything was cranked at 100% and everything, and it wasn't doing anything. Then I was like, huh, that's weird. And then tried some other ones, wasn't doing anything. So the display wasn't showing any difference. Basically, like everything was looking, you know, normal. And then I would basically like save my scene file and then reopen Maya. And then when I would reopen, all the stuff that I was doing blindly, all of a sudden were there. So that made basically like create a huge mess, right? Like because the stuff I was trying to crank the brush like high intensity because I was not able to see what was doing. And then all of a sudden it was actually being done, but it's just like the display for some reason wasn't refreshing it. It wasn't showing it. So basically like you destroy that scene by just like doing that blindly, right? So the first thing I'm gonna tell you is like, if you notice this behavior, for example, you're sculpting something, all of a sudden you're not getting any effect. And you know, it's like first thing you do, you double check if the intensity at 100%, if you don't have like freeze, for example, like the freeze mask, right, is a big one, because if you have it on, you know, it's like for example, like if I go to this guy here, For example, each one of those tools, for example, if I go to this one here, right, click this little brush one, what it has this thing here that's called invert frozen effect. If that's on, for example, that means you're only going to be able to sculpt inside of frozen stuff. And then in that case, sometimes you're trying to do it and it's not working. You have to check if you don't have that on, you know, first. Then you check if the strength is all the way 100 or at least more than 0, right? And if it's still not doing anything, I would say like just stop working. If you notice that things are not responding, save what it is, try to undo a few times, just make sure you didn't mess up with anything, and then close Maya and reopen altogether, you know, because it gets like I said, after a couple of hours, you get into this kind of unstable stage, and then everything seems a little weird, you know. It's like a lot of the tools don't obey very correctly. So that's the first one. The second one is one that I mentioned before. That's this density brush here, which in theory should be amazing, right? You should just be able to paint like on the fly the density of the you know, the entire thing. I did this a few times in the past. This one creates all sorts of problems as well. It's the buggiest of all those brushes here for the interactive. So instead of using the density brush, I would say like paint a mask, right? And then basically control the density with a mask. The problem is like you cannot paint the mask inside of ZBrush, of Maya, because Maya only accepts one UDIM for painting in 3D interactively in Maya. It's not a limitation of XGen, it's a limitation of Maya. You cannot paint across UDIMs basically when you're painting 3D. So, but you still, XGen still supports it. So what you can do, you can paint a mask in ZBrush, right? Paint a mask in ZBrush, export all UDIMs from ZBrush like you normally do with your color, and plug here to the density, you know, sliders, and then you can control that by using, you know, and then you have the you know, the option of using the color correction nodes and stuff, you know, it's like, or just reducing the alpha intensity and then actually making more or less dense doing that way, you know. So that's the second trap in there. So try to avoid this guy here, right? It's yeah, in theory is great, but until they fix the bugs, I would not trust that at all. So the third one, it's not like a, you know, it's just like, it's not like a bug, it's just a trick. Is that thing that I mentioned to you guys that I was mentioning that I did with Miha, right? Like was basically like exporting the description and bringing it back later, right? Use the export and an import just to unlock whatever you did with the selection tool. I like using the selection tool just to block an area. For example, if it's something like the muzzle, right? Like I was actually doing the stubble in here. So I could easily just select those faces in here and then apply just to them instead of like the whole face, because that would be very slow to manipulate, right? So just like in there. And then to unlock that, I just like export it and just re-import it back. And then it kind of unlocks that area. So we're gonna do the same for the eyebrows. So the first thing we're gonna do is gonna be very similar to what we did last week, which is like, I'm gonna click this guy here for selection, right? Select the by area like that. But before I do that, I'm gonna have to create a symmetry node here. So let's go to this guy here, symmetry off, topology, and I'm gonna pick one edge in the middle, can be around here. So now everything should be symmetrical. Yep, it's following. And now we can actually go here. And even like, I didn't know he did that. I painted just one side, he actually duplicated to the other side. I didn't know he did that. That's kind of cool. Now the problem with this guy here is, I can show you what the problem is. It's going to be very different for all of you guys because eyebrows are very tricky, right? The problem is that, let's see if I have it still up. Native American. See, like this is a sculpture, right? Which is kind of cool. I really like the feeling of it. But this guy has eyebrows, right? And if you look at some pictures, this guy has major eyebrows, right? This one I was looking actually because it's a modern guy, but the skin tone was pretty cool. And it does look a little metallic because of the, you know, looks a little oily, right? But look at those eyebrows, man. They're very thick, right? But I noticed that those guys, as they age, a lot of them have almost like no eyebrows. So that's a lady, right? But then look at this guy, has basically no eyebrows, right? And then you're gonna look at some other guys here. This guy, no eyebrows. This guy, basically no eyebrows, right? This one, very little eyebrows. This lady, she has some eyebrows, but not a lot. this guy has eyebrows. So like, I'm gonna have to figure it out which one I'm gonna go for, because some of them have no eyebrows whatsoever. Obviously, the pictures are very low res, so they probably have a little fuzz in there, but this guy here has eyebrows, right? You can tell it there. But I'm gonna have to pick like which one's gonna work for my character, because at this point here, I don't totally dislike his version without eyebrows. That's kind of interesting, but I think he needs a little bit of something in there, you know. So what I might have to do here, since I want to teach you guys, instead of like just doing my own thing and then let you guys figure it out, I'm gonna actually add more eyebrows that I need, and then I'm probably gonna control this later on and remove some of them with masks or whatever, you know. But to show you how I do it, at least I'm gonna have to do something here. So even if I have to remove them later. So that's an interesting thing, you know. It's like when I first announced my classes like last May, the first one I was about to run, my intention is to actually, okay, so this is gonna be a fly on the wall. Why? Because I want to do my own thing, and you just watch me. You know, it's kind of like it's a weird concept, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, okay, am I? You know, it's like I'm so good that, you know, it's like you guys cannot talk to me, right? You just watch me. But that was not the intention. It was just like really because I wanted something that was simpler, you know, in a way. But then at the same time, as soon as we start the classes, I was like, man, that's not fair, you know, because I mean, I should be mentoring people instead of like just doing my own thing. And then from the get-go, it kind of like instantly evolved into something that's more of a mentorship, I suppose, you know, because I really want to make sure that you guys are taking something out of those classes, you know. It makes me really proud actually when I see you guys producing stuff and evolve with your work, you know. It's really cool. And it's not cheap, you know. It's not that, I would not say that's very expensive compared to what's out there for the amount of time and content that you get, but definitely, like, you know, especially if you're students, it's not something cheap. But yeah, it's cool that you guys are supporting me, so thank you so much. So I'm gonna start with something like this first. It's like I normally start with an area that's a little bit bigger than what I need. Because of that, you know, because it's locked right into the polygons. But since we're going to be transferring stuff probably to open up that that area, I'm not going to be too concerned about it. So I'm just going to do something maybe a little bit bigger around here, because I want to get those eyebrows up at the end in there. And then we're going to reduce and fade things and do all kinds of stuff here with modifiers. But for now, I have an area like this, right? Pretty big. And let's start with adding some new description here. So let's do a create interactive groomed splines. I did a test run, and then the last time you use, you know, it's like even if you close it keeps in there as a memory. But I did this one because I was counting the amount of hairs in an eyebrow using Google, right? Because Google is good for this stuff. So that's basically like the average number of hairs per eyebrow, which is very little. But they say here that's like never plucked eyebrows, right? Can have as many as 1,100 total hairs each, right? It goes from 250 to 1,100 if you never plucked. And I believe those Native Americans, they never plucked. So I'm going to start with something around there, right? So if I consider that number, so I should have like 2,200, right, as a maximum. So I can just go back here to something around that number. Maybe like 75 here. It's a good number. So it gave me like 1,050 or 1,000 and I don't know, 75 in each. 65, 1,065 in each. So I'm gonna do this, and then for the length, I don't know for sure what's the length we're gonna need. We can use the scale node to help us out. But let's start with, let's see, maybe 0.7. And then the width scale, let's do maybe like 0.014. The CV count, I'm gonna keep 32, but if you wanna go like super crazy with like really twisting and creating like curved eyebrows and stuff, like, you know, like some flyaways, you can always go higher than this, but you don't need to do this now. You can start with 32. If it's too little, we can actually rebuild your curves to have 64. So I'm gonna start like this. So let's apply it. And then I got like those bushes in there, right? Done, render. Now, they're not going to render very well this way. So we're going to have to do something about it. So let's expand this eyebrows in here. Let's go to our modifier, and we're going to add some guides in here, just like we did with eyelashes. So add modifier, guide. Then we're going to click our guide, right? Going to go down here to the attribute editor. And then right here in the middle, you're going to have the input guide create. We have to basically plug them in there first, right? So we're going to create them. And it's going to add all of those guys, those yellow ones in there, right? But unlike for the eyelashes that I just dealt with it, right? It created a bunch of guides in there, and I just went with it, right? I just like brushed whatever the program gave me. For the eyebrows, I want more control than this. And this is like too much and it's too random for me. And I want to have more control about the directions and everything. So what you can do, remember I told you like when you create guides, it creates its own system, right? As soon as you create, using the input guide here and create, it creates all those, the new description within the description, right? So you have eyebrows, that's description, and you have like the in-guide description now inside of it, which is its own system. So that way you can actually, for example, like the scale of those guides, right? You can actually play with it, just like you do with the hair. You can sculpt them, you can taper them, you can do everything you do with the regular hair, right? But it's its own system. I'm gonna keep a little, thicker like that so I can see it. So with that in mind, what you can do, you can actually expand the sculpt tool in here and click edit. And then obviously like you can sculpt the guides like we did for the eyelashes. But the first thing we're gonna do here, now that I have this one selected, I'm gonna go to the, let's see, which one is that? Oh, the in guide here. So this guy, I'm gonna go to the, I'm gonna click the in guide and I'm gonna go to the density tool that I told you not to touch. Just for this case here, this is gonna be important because that's just to help us out here. I'm gonna eliminate this stuff. So I have my density brush. I'm gonna go to tool settings in here, right? And I'm gonna make sure that I have this selected, right? I have the edit in here inside of the guide. This is very important. And I have the paint operation set to 0. So value is at 0 and the strength is at 100%. So I'm gonna go to flood and I'm gonna say flood all. So now it basically like eliminated all those guys that I had. Now I'm not gonna touch this anymore because I told you super buggy, right? But just for this step here, it's a good help. So I'm gonna keep the edit on and now I'm gonna create my own guides. I'm gonna click this guy here, the place one. And I'm gonna start by creating like a bunch on the top and then a bunch on the bottom. So I'm gonna start with the top. I'm gonna create one here. Right, I'm gonna create another one. It's not gonna respond straight away because there's no interpolation. I'm gonna create another one here. Now there's interpolation between the two. I can actually even like make them longer already so we can actually have the control we need. So I'm gonna click the length one and I'm gonna do like increment. So I'm gonna just, actually it's locked to the maximum length here. I'm gonna unlock it. Do this. And the direction is still pretty weird, right? But I'm just gonna do this so we can actually use this brush. Just get a little bit of the direction. So let's see if we bring this one down. Like that. And then this one down like that. It's gonna give you a little direction. It looks a little messy, but we're gonna fix it. So now we're gonna interpolate in between those, right? We don't have anything for the other one just yet. Just for this guy. So we have those two. Let's add some more in here. I'm gonna get one right in the middle around here. And it's the interpolate has to be on, right? So I'm gonna click that one. And then another one here, and another one here. So now I have 5 at the top. You're gonna just pull them out a little bit like that. And I'm gonna do the same for the other side. I could do like in mirror, but I did like one at a time because this my model is fairly asymmetrical now. And I can just do like, I can create interpolation here for now. But then I'm gonna brush it the opposite way. Oops, sorry, this one has symmetry, so I'm gonna turn it off. And my strength is not at 100, so that's why it's taking me a little longer. So now it's better. So I got this one going this direction, this one going this direction. And then now I can actually interpolate this guy here. Let's do. Ouch. With the mouse. So this guy here, let's go around here, create another one top, and already brush it. So it's actually following that direction. That's a bush. And then we're gonna go with this one and do the same. So one at the top right here in the middle, another one around here and around here. So now we have 5 at the top in each side. A little bit out. A lot of them, we can actually see if that's too much or not. And then obviously you don't need to see all the hair at all times. If that bothers you, you know, it's like it's hard to see. You can actually click the top node like that and you can just see those guys. It's actually easier. Let's see what's going on. And then now we're gonna do the bottom ones, right? So for the bottom ones, we're gonna create like, the intention is to create like little V's. So we're gonna do the same. I'm gonna click this guy here. And I'm gonna create another one at the bottom. Make sure I'm hitting an area that's inside of the, what is it? What? Oh, I think interesting. Let's see. Why is it not adding to it? Oh, okay. Weird. Yeah, I was actually adding the regular ones instead of the guides, because I think I have to have the guide clicked. Let's see. Yeah, so I have to have the guide clicked in order to add them. So I'm gonna click that one. But before I do this, let's do this first. Remember we talked about having the freeze tool. So let's freeze the top ones here. So I'm gonna make my brush smaller by using B and then dragging my left mouse button. And I have the freeze selected. So I'm gonna freeze the top ones. So anything we do from this point on, that they are not gonna move, right? So now if I just like basically brush this bottom one here, we should follow just that and then interpolate with the top. So we're gonna do that. And then we're gonna go to the next one. Click that one, make sure you click guide. And then I'm gonna click here. And we're gonna bring this one up, creating a little V in there, right? Actually, the other one I'm gonna have to tweak a little bit to make a nice little V. And then I'm gonna do the same for those guys. So one here, and one here. So now we're gonna brush them out, up, strength a little smaller. A little smaller brush too. So just by doing this, you know, it's like you already get like the little peak in the middle. Obviously, like it's a very rough representation of it, but at least there is a little bit of a structure, you know. It's like that's basically what you expect your eyebrow to do. It's kind of like go and meet the other ones in the middle and you get that little peak right there. So that's just like the beginning of an eyebrow, basically, right? It's a good, simple way to start it. It's gonna get you pretty close. And then obviously, like I can, at any time, basically like reverse this and then freeze the bottom ones and then unfreeze the top ones and keep going with it. So I'm gonna just add some more on the other side, same deal. I'm gonna freeze those guys here as well. Just make sure I don't touch them. And I'm gonna add some more in here. So we'll go with another one here, there, here, and here. Oh, there you go. And then we'll just brush them up using, obviously, the comb tool. Every time you sculpt like your hair, try to make sure you don't get that little bend around there. You have to actually pull it pretty good so it actually stretches the hair, so you don't get that little bend, you know, otherwise it looks weird, like close to the root. It's nice when it's nice and stretched like that. Otherwise you get that, you know what I mean, like that little curve like that, unless that's the effect you're looking for. But for the eyebrows, I would rather have them a little bit more stretched. So with the eyebrows, it's not gonna be different from sculpting skin when it comes to the hierarchy of things, right? You're first gonna start with a pass like this that's just like blocking the general direction. But then there's that whole work that goes on top of it, right? Which is like the things gonna be included in this in the next steps from here, gonna be basically like the density, right? So we're gonna have to make sure that we have like density in the areas we want. The thickness of the hair, we're gonna need some variation, and then we're gonna have to paint some areas much thinner than others. Probably around here, they're gonna be, you know, we gotta get some thinner ones right in the middle, the monobrow in there. And then there's the peach fuzz we're gonna add, like, you know, to blend with them. There are all kinds of little passes. There is the noise and the clumping, you know, all kinds of stuff we can do to make them more interesting. But this is the blocking stage. So I think it's a good starting point. So let's just do the freezing thing here. And then starting in this area here, actually, instead of like those coming from the top, normally those ones here, they go and follow the same direction. What I can do here, I can actually lock those guys. And I'm gonna lock first the top ones with control, right? Just unlock them. And then what I can do, I can just brush this one up. Try to follow the same general direction in there, going up. And then the bottom ones, let's see if I can make them look go up slightly. So let's see, let's go stretch a little bit. Freeze it again. I'm gonna freeze this one with control. I'm gonna try to go up with them. Yeah, something like that. It's a little better than that V that I have in the rest of it. And then the other ones we're gonna have here in the middle is gonna be like blenders, right? So a lot of those gonna be controlled by the density mask. So we're gonna be losing some of those. And then we're gonna be incorporating some small, tiny ones in betweens in there as well. So another thing we can do here, for example, like now the brush, the shape looks pretty odd, right? Because we don't have like a mask to control, make sure to have a like nice structure in there. But in terms of the direction, I think is in a good spot. I think like the peak is kind of like running on top of his brow ridge in there. So that's good. It's just a matter of like fixing whatever it's odd now. But then before we go ahead and do that, let's just unlock everything. Or not, you can keep it if you want. But just to show you this, so now I can do the opposite, right? You can just like hide the guide itself, so you have just the eyebrows. Remember that those things are independent, right? You can add a bunch of different passes to the guides themselves and treat them as they are hair, right? Or you can do the same for the hair itself. If you have a node in here, if you add a modifier on top of the guides, this is basically going to be overriding whatever the guides are doing. So you can actually select like one of those hairs and then like turn it to like a flyaway, right? Just like paint a little mask with the freeze and just change that specific hair. And that basically going to be overriding whatever the guides are doing, right? You can do like all kinds of custom stuff from this point on. But at any time, you can actually go back to the guides and still change things at a macro level, right? Just like by using the guides themselves. So you have like this double control in there. It's like a fine detail control and like a primary forms kind of control with the guides, right? So this one is here. Let's see, I can bring it out just slightly. There's a little bit of intersection in there. There you go. And then, so let's hide the guides. And let's see what happens if we just introduce, for example, like a modifier. I know it's a mask for now. It's not like looking great. And I need to get give shape to it, but let's do like a modifier here just to see what happens. Actually, you're gonna select the eyebrows, the top node first. And I'm gonna add noise here. Noise is good for everything, right? And the cool thing about the noise is that, actually not the cool thing, but the deceiving thing about the noise is that sometimes it looks like it's too noisy when you look at the viewport, but then when you render, it looks just right. So it's one thing you have to check, you know. For example, let's go to the noise in here. And you have like the magnitude, right? We have enough, we have like 32 points of control. So that's gonna give you a lot of, you know, curvature in there. They look quite perfect, even at cranked like that. You have the preserved length. So basically, like I normally use this one to preserve the length. So it actually curves, but without growing or shrinking, right? And then you have the frequency here. If you have the frequency too high, you're gonna get always scraggly like that, right? So you have to watch out for that. But you can do multiple passes. You can have like a pass that looks like this. That's a little bit more broad with a higher magnitude, for example, right? And then you can have a smaller one just to break things up a little further. And you can plug, for example, in the magnitude here, you can plug like, for example, a noise. You know, you can plug noises for all those things here. You can use like a mask, for example. With the mask here, you can plug like a noise, and then you're gonna get some of them to be completely spread out. So the way that, I think like in the past, what I did for the flyaways, for example, I would create a different description just for flyaways. So I would have like the eyebrows, I'm gonna select the same faces, create another description, and that one would be the messy one, just with like few hairs in there, but like very, very, you know, it's like spread out and weird just to create the flyaways. But then for last month of July, when I sculpted my wife, for her hair, I actually did the flyaways by using a mask and a noise modifier. So that way I actually didn't have to create a different description. What I did, I just like, you know, use the mask to control just a few of them. So like, you know, it's like depending on how you crank the contrast of your noise map, you can actually get like just a few of them to be affected by the mask. And then that way you can crank the magnitude a lot. And then all of a sudden you get this crazy hair all everywhere, you know, it's like, so you can do that using the mask and a noise modifier, for example, which is, it's a good idea. So yeah, so I'm gonna be using like, during the course of this whole project here, probably like maybe like 2 or maybe 3 noise modifiers. You can use the clump, right? Like, and remember the order is important. If you have a noise modifier and you add a clump on top of the noise, the clump is gonna take priority, right? But if you want to preserve the noise effect, you have to make sure that the clump is underneath the noise. So let's add a clump in here, for example, add modifier. You're probably not going to get a ton of clump, but it's always good to have a little thing here. So this one is cranked all the way up, right? Like the clump is at 1. Always reduce the amount of clump you want. But the important one here is the density, right? We have 1 as the maximum for it. But remember that this one here is just PS. You can actually crank to any number you want. You can put like 200 here. And then he gives that. Let's see if we go lower. You're probably not going to get a lot of clump, like I said, but it's cool to have something, you know. So let's see. Clump. And yeah, maybe like 100 something is not too bad. Let's see. It all depends on how it's going to render, right? If you render, it looks weird. It looks too wet. Looks like a wet dog, then it's too much. But if you use like a high intensity, it's just a few of them going to blend with each other. And then you add the noise on top. So that's the difference right here. So I have the noise. If I crank it, let's see if I crank this one pretty good magnitude. So that's basically like, you see, the noise is underneath the clump, right? Let's see what happens if I move this up. So I'm going to click on it. And I'm gonna move up here. See, it's a different effect. I'm gonna go back. So basically, like the noise is taking priority over the clump, right? So you get the clump underneath. So it all depends on what type of effect you wanna go with, you know. But the priority is always like the top node. So make sure you follow that structure at all times. So now that we have this, let's work on the thickness and all that stuff. So if I give you like a ballpark here for my, let's see, for my eyelashes, for example. For the lower eyelashes, I'm using a very small amount, like a very small number for the width, so it's 0.1. But the top ones, I'm using 0.120. So they are slightly thicker, the eyelashes. If I turn it on, you can see here. But you see like the top ones are still like doll-like, you know, so I have to actually, you know, play with it just like I did with the bottom ones. But yeah, they're pretty doll-like right now. But they are slightly thicker than the bottom ones, the way I did it. But having that number in mind, upper lashes at 0.120, I can actually have an idea about the eyebrows. I can go, let's see, eyebrows, 0. Oh, that's weird that I have a different amount in there. That's weird. So I have the taper at 0.08. Why are they looking so big? Let's taper this one to something similar. Why is that like, the other one is like a 0.1. What is that? That's weird. Yeah, it's not like a corresponding number for some reason. Oh, it's 0. Okay, 0.012. That's so odd. Look at that. This one is giving me like a scale 0.012, but this one 0.120. And I cannot believe it's just because of the curve. Something else going on in there. Let's try to add a little bit of that curve in there. This basically controls like the root, right? This is gonna control the tip right here. It's like how thin you wanna go with it, right? You have also that control with the taper right there that you can control the tips as well. But so let's add some of that and see if that plays with, I'm gonna make the root slightly smaller than the middle area. And then I'm gonna go into a smaller size like that. But then the overall size, I think I need to go thicker. And it's funny because I cannot even use that number as a reference because it's in a totally different unit. Look at that, 0.12, and this one is at 0.015, and they are pretty similar. Very odd. Don't remember seeing this before. Okay, so now we have these bushes in there, and they have a little bit more of shape, right? Like, so they're getting a little thinner in the edges, thanks to this curve that we just added in there. I made all of them into splines. By default, they are linear. So if you make it to splines, you get more of like a round kind of result, right? Which is cool. And on top of that, I have some of the taper to compensate for that and exaggerate a little bit further. And then now let's play with the shape of them. I think, I wonder how we're gonna do this without seeing it in ZBrush. I think I'm gonna have to do a little blind here. But like I said, this guy probably gonna have very little hair. So I think it's gonna be fine in ZBrush. Let's paint some masking here. And the way I normally do this, just gonna duplicate this guy. So my maximum resolution before HD for this guy is 1.1 million. So I'm just gonna duplicate it right here. And I'm gonna just rename it browse density. And then I can just like flood this entire thing white. Actually, it's gonna be density, so it has to be black and then white. So I'm gonna start with, actually for me to be able to see it, I think it's better if I paint white and black and then just reverse the map. So let's try that. Let's do color. Let's crank RGB all the way to 100. Color, fill object. So now it's all white. Let's switch to a material that's not too blown up like that. And then let's get some black in here. And let's paint a little mask. This is just gonna be like a mask for the eyebrow, so you don't need like a high resolution mesh. So I think like at 1.1 million, we should get enough. What I'm gonna do here, just make sure I'm gonna go to activate symmetry and use posable symmetry, just to make my life a little easier here. And then we're gonna have to find first like one reference here that has a little bit of an eyebrow, but it's gonna be hard. Like I said, those guys, the coolest ones have no eyebrows. Let's see if I get one of those guys with eyebrows. Oh, that guy has an interesting, it's so blurry, man. It's like the resolution is so bad. Let's see if I get some of them in here. This guy has any, but nope. And they're so tiny too, the resolution. Yeah, this guy here, you see, like, it's interesting because he has more around there, but not a lot on the sides. So that's kind of like a cool one to have like less intensity on the sides. Let's get something like that. So let's paint a mask. Switch to standard brush, no alpha. Control, let's paint a mask here. So that's gonna be around. Oh, I think I changed the, yeah, I think I changed something there. Let's get a little bit more. Let's just try to define those brows first. And then we're just gonna tweak them to look decent, but at least like get the ballpark of the shape. Raise this area here slightly, a little bit more square. And then you're probably gonna have to tweak this area to fade into like very thin hair later. So they probably you're not gonna be able to see a lot of hair at the end here, but we need to have at least like the positioning for them. You have something like that. Let's see, a little less in here, a bit more round too. Probably a little bit more underneath. Oh, I just pressed Control and clicked, and then it made everything soft. So that should give us a little ballpark for it. I don't know how much of that's going to be like coincident with what we have in there, but I hope it's enough. And then obviously I can tweak this map later and get a better version of it. Just don't want him to look like a clown. Enough with jokers, man. Enough jokers. Let's get this one lower. Okay, let's start with that. And it doesn't look good, but we need to do it. So let's do it, and then we fix it later. Fix in post. Right, so just I'm gonna press Control, click outside, so we reverse the mask. Just gonna paint a little black in there. And then we can paint it black and then maybe like blend some other areas. That's gonna be full black in here. So that's the intensity, or the density, right? But let's say we wanna blend some of that. Let's get like a low intensity, like 2. I'm gonna blend this area here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Yeah. Quick question about the pores. Oh man, those are fun. It's tricky. So I made a pour. I'm really happy with my pour I made, and then I decided to make like a multiple pour, like you did, and it looks good on the plane. I did the MRGBZ grabber. But when I put it on my face, I feel like the pores in the middle are deeper than the pores on the outside.
Oh yeah. It's because of like if you right click in your brush, you basically like you have to turn your focal shift all the way down. So
okay.
Yeah, let's see how I have my setup. I can just tell you here.
Yeah, I played with everything, like the surface button and the.
So you see, like my is set to focal shift -100, so like all the way down.
Okay.
And then for the alpha itself, I'm using that mid value, right? That's just to give us like the perfect intensity. So in my case here is 96, and I'm not using any radial fade. So that means like as long as you nail the amount, the correct amount, you should be fine. But if you don't nail it, that's what's going to happen here. For example, if I have my mid value at 68, for example, and I try to apply it, you're going to see that square around, right? That border that's square, because now we eliminated the focal shift, so you don't have a fade for it to happen. So that's when you test this, and if you're getting like a square around it like this, you're gonna have to tweak this number here all the way until it disappears. And in my case here was about 96. If I try, for example, 94, you're gonna see a tiny little bit of it still. But as soon as I hit 96, I should be basically like either completely invisible or very close to that. Yeah, completely invisible.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So, thanks, dude. I'll give that a try.
No problem, man. All right. Let's see. Centered. Okay. So now I'm actually painting a little bit of this blend, right? So I selected the white color and very low intensity, 2, maybe 3. And I'm just painting back and creating a gray in here, right? So the part that's completely black is going to be full density. And the part that's gray is going to start getting less and less dense, right? So around the edges in here, just like painting a little bit more gray. And I'm going to keep the bigger density right in the middle. And hope that's going to give us a nice result. And then obviously you're going to be using the peach fuzz, basically like adding length to the peach fuzz around this area to blend with the eyebrows. So at the end of the day, you get this nice blend everywhere in there. So just a little bit around here, I can actually, maybe I can grow this area here a little bit more just to get like a few of them around there. Let's see if I switch to flat color. Yeah, it doesn't look that good, but I think what we can do, we can actually use some RGB and then smooth. Let's try with smooth. Yeah, we can get a nice 100% smooth without the Z-add, right? Just the RGB. We can actually really blend it. Something a little bit more perfect. All right, so like that. Now I have a nice little area of blend in there. It still has plenty of density right in the middle, but again, like I said before, it's the kind of stuff like you're gonna have to assign it and then test it and see if it's working. If it's not, we do it again. And then, so let's do this. Let's export this and see what we get. So it has this, actually like it's a little bit too neutral for how badass he was looking with you know, with the expression in there. So I might have to actually make them a little lower, but that's gonna be our first pass here. So let's see what we get. So let's see, crank this RGB intensity. I already have this named browse density, so I don't need to do anything else. I'm gonna go to my plugin, turn off displacement for multi-map exporter, turn on texture from Polypaint. I can use like any resolution here. I'm gonna do I can do like 248. And I don't need switch morph target, and that's about it, right? Create all maps, and that's gonna be it in source images. That should take just a few seconds. Second one, third, fourth, and fifth, last one. 16 seconds, not bad. Okay, so now we have a map for the density, right? So let's see what we have there. You look at those bushes, and again, I'm gonna have to pray that we are actually in the ballpark for the placement in there. But again, it's just like, it's gonna be a help, and it doesn't need to be absolutely precise, right? You just have to make sure that it's getting the effect in there. So let's go to the eyebrows, and then let's look at the eyebrows base. So the eyebrows base is where you have your density mask, right? So if you bring it down, that's what happens right there, right? Get more or less. Funny that space like it doesn't go to 0 in that little area right there for some reason. So we're gonna plug this right here in this mask. So let's see what happens. And what might happen is that we are not gonna see the results straight away, and we're gonna have to play with the density of that, the intensity of those, the color, right? So I'm gonna plug it in here. Might have to play with the alpha intensity. So browse density, let's click this one, open it. It's very odd in there because we don't have the UV tiling. So let's plug UDIM, right? So now we got that one. And we are getting the reverse effect, right? Because remember we said like I'm gonna have to paint black so I can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, if it was everything black and was trying to paint a white, that it would be hard to see. But in those cases, you can just go here if you're doing the opposite and you can go to your color balance, actually not color balance, to effects, and you click invert. So that basically inverts the map for you, right? So now it's giving more intensity in the middle and then less intensity towards the sides and the tops, right? So it got a little bit closer to what we had, but still we can actually crank and play with intensity here in the color balance. Let's put like alpha is luminous. And then it's like if I bring it down here, right? And then if I bring the offset as well, I think the offset I can put negative to, let's see. Yeah, so I can play with the negative and see what happens. I can start populating more and more like that. And then this one as well. So you have control for like the thicker parts and then the smaller parts as well. So you can find like a one here that actually looks like, instead of like this bush that we had before, something that starts to look more like the one we painted. Right? And in this case of this guy here, like I mentioned before, I mean, I don't want him to have big bushes, right? So I'm probably going to start eliminating more and more of the sides in here and leaving more and more around this area here at the end. But yeah, that's basically how you control, you know. You can paint this mask like in ZBrush and keep refining it. I mean, like it takes just a few seconds to export every time and just like replacing it here, you know. You see like right now they're kind of like spread out from the skin. And it's always nice when you have them following the direction of the skin a little bit better, you know. So at any time you can always use the guides again. If it's getting too heavy for you to sculpt with after you have clump and noise, just turn them off. So you're not going to get the effect, but at least for sculpting it's going to be much faster. And then you can just click the sculpt, and then you can sculpt the guides. Let's turn them on first. And I'm going to get them all closer to the skin. From an angle like that, from the bottom or from the top. You can get them to follow the skin a bit closer. And then everything from this point on is going to be like, just like with the skin, you know, how much you're going to push it, you know, it's like how much more complexity you want to add. And then that's just a matter of like, okay, let's go to town with modifiers. I need like, I don't know, instead of like 2 noise modifiers, I'm going to add like 5. One of them is going to be to control just the flyaways, you know, and you can do all kinds of stuff with it. It's just, you know, I gave you like the directions in there. It's just like now it's based like your creativity that's going to dictate whatever you want to do with your model. But what we can explore here before we go actually is to try to add some flyaways and see if they work. Because in case if you want to do that, you know. So so let's see if we wanted to add some flyaways here using the approach of oh, actually, around this area here, I would be nice to add more stuff in that side. So let's do that little transfer thing that I did before. So let's select everything here. Everything is visible. I'm gonna click the eyebrows, and I'm gonna do the description preset export. So basically select the top node, right? Description preset export. Save the scene to continue. Yes. I just want to unlock it so we can actually add some more on the sides in here. So I can show you how I do it. I just want to actually, you know, unlock that that whole mask area. So I'm going to click this one here to save it. And I normally save within my my scene files because they kind of like, they have a different name like that. So I'm gonna put like eyebrows 1, save, and then viewport snapshot. You can do it if you want, like you can do it like viewport snapshot, just like open a little square like that, so we can see what it is. And then you click export. Just takes a bit. It's not a lot of hair. And then now I can actually delete it. Unless if you want to keep as a backup, you can do that too. You can just like hide it, right? Actually, I can hide this one in the guides just as a backup. And then I can select the mesh itself instead of just like this area, right? So I'm gonna deselect everything I had here. like that. So there's no selection now. And I'm gonna select the model itself. So it's green right there. And then description, preset, import. Gonna sample that one we just exported, eyebrows. And I'm gonna switch those two, right? I'm gonna switch from position based to UV based, from rotate to original. Import. Still thinking about it. All right, so we got the new description. So we have our backup in there, just in case. We have this other one here, and everything should be working. Let's see, we have the guides. We can hide the guides, right? Let's see if the guides are working if I wanna brush them. Are they not? Yes, they are. Just because I have, I think I have the clump and let's turn them off and see if it goes faster. Yeah, much faster. So everything works. It's just like it was re-imported. So it's a nice way to keep backups of your stuff, you know. At any time you can actually import and export. But the thing is, like, you have to rename it, right? Like, remember we did like the search and replace. So basically, like, you have to search and replace eyebrows 1, the underscore, and then replace with space, and then basically eliminates that. But other than that, I mean, for now, I'm just gonna keep that messy name in there. So now it's unlocked, so we can actually play and add more stuff in here. So instead of like using the edit for the guide itself, I'm gonna use the edit for the sculpt. This one here, which is the sculpt for the main eyebrows, right? So let's see what happens if I can do this edit here. Let's see if I try to add an additional, like this little guy here, right? Like just a place tool. And I'm gonna add with interpolation on. Let's see what happens if I click around here. So I got like extra hairs, which is really cool. So I can either do this way, or you can actually go to the guide itself, and you can do that as well. So for example, I can freeze everything, all of them, and I can just create, making sure that I have the guide selected, right? I'm gonna create one around here. I'm gonna bring this one up. And I can make it small too. And then I can keep doing this, like add some more in here. So another one around here. Let's freeze this one, move this one up. And let's see, closer here. And then maybe another one around here. Something like that. So now I have those guides in there. And then in theory, actually, let's add to the other side as well. Get those ones, add some more here. One here, and one here somewhere. Let's bring them all kind of up. Let's make them, maybe I do this one this way. I'm gonna freeze it. Oops. Bring this to here. Freeze this guy. And then this last one, do it more like that. And then now we can actually, whoops, we can unfreeze those guys and make them smaller. So let's get this guy here. Small, 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 very small. A little longer. Small, small. So now if we start in theory, so that's basically the guides we just added, right? Maybe I need another one right in the middle here to prevent that craziness in there. But in theory, if I switch back to the top one, so this guy here, and I get, and I turn on this one here, which is the sculpt, right? not the guide sculpt, but the regular sculpt that's underneath the guide here. Then if I try to add some hair now around here, now they're gonna start interpolating with the surrounding area, right? So you're gonna get some of them like that. And then you can, you know, it's like add more interpolating lines if you want, or guides. But it's cool because you can actually add them, you know, manually anywhere you want. That's the thing that's so frustrating about XGen, you know, it's like it's a beautiful piece of software when it comes to features. Everything is so awesome, you know. It's just like it's so buggy, man. It's so frustrating. It's like it's so close to be like an amazing piece of, you know, it's incredible. I mean, like some people I've seen, like, you know, even in my class, like switching from different softwares to XGen because, you know, they try in the class. I think Marlon was one who actually was trying, or Natrix, I think, and then he switched to XGen. But he knows it's super buggy for sure. You know, it's just the features, man, is so easy. You know, I'm not gonna say easy, but like very how you say? Yeah, it's kind of like it has a nice flow to it. It's you know, it's like it's easy to predict the stuff you need to do. You know, it's like once you get a hold of how things work. But it's just like it's just the bugs that drive me and drive everybody crazy, right? There are groups on Facebook like just dedicated to bug tracking the bugs of XGen. But yeah, you see, like there are basically I just add like stuff in there, but obviously it's a little messy, right? But you get the concept. Like if you want like a perfect transition, you're gonna add more guides and get like a more perfect transition to those things. And then the last thing we're gonna be talking about here, since we are pretty close to our time, let's add some variation for the thickness, for example, right? So for the thickness, there are a bunch of things you can approach here. You can either go to the top node of your eyebrows, not the eyebrows guide, but the eyebrows themselves. And then you can go to your attribute editor and you see like you have the scale here, right? With the scale that we are using, like 0.014. You can do, for example, you can add a noise right here to control that. So we get like some thickness variance, right? So you can do that now. So let's click this little checker and then let's add noise, right? Like I have this bushy stuff in there. And then here, we're gonna do what we normally do. We're gonna turn off below, we're gonna put purling noise. And I'm gonna crank the frequency quite a lot. Because this one, if I crank a lot, that means that basically like, doesn't matter how close they are to each other, which one of the hairs, they're gonna have a different effect. One is gonna be black, the other one's gonna be white or gray or whatever, you know? So the frequency being high is important. And then now we're gonna play with the amplitude and then with the threshold. Actually, there is the ratio here as well. No, where is it? There is one. Is it a color balance that I'm gonna have to play with? Maybe it is. Yeah, the color balance. So the color balance here is gonna give me something to play with. So I have the scale here and you can see there's already some variation happening, but I don't wanna keep like a variation too big between them. So I'm gonna have to go here to the threshold, I believe. Yeah, so this one is gonna give me like from fully, you know, it's like a lot of variation there to no variation at all if I crank all the way up. So I'm gonna have to find a happy medium in here and then go back to my alpha gain and then find a general width that I'm happy with. It cannot be too thick because it gets too wiry, right? And it cannot be too thin because then it looks like a peach fuzz. So I'm gonna try here maybe 19 or something like that as a starting point. And then there's something about the length as well, right? They are very short right now. And we want some of them to be longer. We can either do that by adding some additional ones right in the middle and then making them longer, or we can push some of those to be longer. For example, those guys I could make longer. But let's add some right here in the middle. If you want to do the guides, remember to click the guides and have the edit checked on the guides, right? If you don't do that, it's going to be disaster. So I'm going to click one right here. I'm going to make that one longer and one here. and maybe one around here. Maybe that went too far. Maybe around here. I don't want the other ones get too long, just those ones here. And now I can actually play with the length of it. Just paint some more length. And then, you know, style them a little bit. And of course, we still have our noise and clump that are off at this point. So let's turn them on and see what happens. That one and this one. Yeah, so you got a little bit more randomness in there, right? Starting to look a little nicer. And then obviously I can, you know, as usual, just hide the guides themselves while they're hidden. And now I can play with the thickness of everything painted by hand, for example. So I have a control for the density, right? And I can use that same control, that same map actually to control the thickness of the hair. So for the width of the hair, or I can actually use something similar, you know. Let's try with that and see if we get some interesting result if we use the same map. So for example, like my eyebrows, before I go further, let me just copy the color of my eyelashes and I'm gonna apply to the eyebrows, the same shader basically. I might change later, but for now, let's see. Select my hypershade, graph, lower lashes. So I'm gonna select my eyebrows, the top node, right click, assign. Didn't work. So when it doesn't work, it's that problem that I mentioned before, which is this surface shader here that's kind of messed up. So I'm just gonna select it. I'm gonna delete it. Did it do anything? Yeah, it's like my refresh is kind of wacky right now. So let's click it again. So eyebrows top, assign. It's not assigning. No, it is, man. You see, like it's already in that state that I mentioned, you guys. It was assigning, but it was not refreshing the scene. So I assigned, it was still yellow, and then as soon as I moved the image, it actually turned black. So yeah, it is wacky, man. Sometimes you have to be careful with this refresh problem I mentioned. So now let's try to play with the width of each one of those by using that. Oh, actually, we cannot play with the width anymore because I plugged the noise in there for that. So I'm gonna do what I had planned before, which was to do manually. So let's do this. Instead of like the guides, I'm gonna select those ones, the eyebrows, and I'm gonna just use this guy here, which is the width tool. And let's make sure that we have it set correctly here. I have set to strength at 45. And is that let's see, this one here. Strength of 45, okay. And let's see if we get this. Where is it? Is it not switching? Oh man, it's not switching. It's not showing anything different. Look at that. I'm switching the tools, clicking them, and it's not switching the tool settings in here. It's in a weird state right now. I might have to actually see, even clicking this one, it's not even switching to here. Yeah, it got into this weird mode that's not switching any tool. It's probably switching like in the background, but it's just not showing there. Oh man, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to reset my, yeah, I don't like that at all. Yeah, weird. Yeah, it's not gonna affect anything from this point on. It sucks, man. Oh, you know what? I think also what's happening here, I think so, is that unless I have something at the top, I think there's something that's going to override as well. But still, I think it's in a weird state because nothing is affecting it, you know. No matter what I click here, the tool settings here don't change. So yeah, I'm going to have to reset. But we are right on time. So what I was about to do was basically this. I was about to select this guy here, right? That's the width tool. And then make sure I have the strength that anything I need, for example, like if I'm gonna do like small changes, go like to a smaller thickness, very slowly, I can just go like a small number like that. And then for the intensity down here, I can actually put negative, and that way I can just click, and then very slowly I'm going to start like making those thinner and thinner, right? So I'm going to use this one to make things thinner. And this one I can actually use to make things a little bit smaller as well, right? So I can use both of them and just like manually paint. If it's something that's underneath some modifier that's actually locking everything, you can always go click to the top one and add additional sculpt modifier. And then that way, basically the top node is going to be this new sculpt modifier, and then you can override everything that's underneath, and you're probably going to be able to sculpt everything. So yeah, so that's basically like the 2 steps I was about to do, is just like make things thinner and a little smaller. And then obviously I'm going to start like actually shrinking all this area here to create the similar effect like this guy, right? Have almost like bald on the sides, and then a little bit more hair in the middle area. But yeah, I think that's it for today. For tomorrow, it's going to be basically like the hardcore version of what we did today. So all this stuff we talked about today applies. But the thing is, like, we're going to be starting to do the hair, right? And longer hair, it's always like tricky, and I normally don't trust the guides alone to do the job because I'm not a great groomer. But I normally rely on a lot of hand sculpting after the guides give me like the general shape of everything, right? But and about the braids, which is gonna be the challenge for me in this class. I never did braids with XGen, but based on the research I was doing, there is a way to create braids very easily, which is there is an hair within Maya. That's basically like the hair you can use with paint effects, so it's not the XGen. But there is one of the settings when you attach like a paint effects to a curve. There is a way, there's just like a checkbox. It's a simple checkbox that says like braids, and just click that one and boom, like automatic braids. So that way you can create the braids automatically, and then convert from paint effects into curves, and then convert from curves into guides later on. But the thing that I'm planning to do is actually start the braids very high, although they should start around here. I'm going to start them very high, and then make them using the technique. I'm going to try tomorrow with you guys. And then as soon as I have the curves generated for the braids, I'm going to edit the curves by pulling some of those points manually and dragging it up to basically like untangle them at this area here, and then become like the hair itself, you know. It's like, so kind of like starts from different areas of the head, like bigger areas like this, and then everything becomes braids, you know. So I'm going to try that and see what happens, you know. But let's see what happens tomorrow, because it's going to be tricky, but eventually we're going to make sure we do it, you know. We're problem solvers here. It doesn't matter what happens, we're going to find a way. So thanks so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed today, and we are going to slowly get back to our rhythm. And sorry about the time as well, because I know that the time zone changed for us in here, and I'll kind of screw you guys up even further. I don't know if you're waking up earlier or going to bed a little later, or whatever it is for you, but
actually for me it's kind of cool, because for us it's changed 1 week before. So if we had the finish of the class last week, I would have to get an hour before.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and again, guys, keep cranking what you're doing there. We're gonna try our best. You know, it's like we keep commenting on stuff and helping the way we can. You know, it's like it's the last week, but let's make sure we are out of trouble. You know, at least like we are all in the same boat. Okay, you know, it's like at least like in terms of the pores and all this stuff, and try to get over that hump and keep cranking on it. And once the class is over, the work is never over, right? Like normally, after the class, I keep working on the model for another week or two before I post something that's semi-finished. So even for me, it takes time, you know. So yeah.
Chris, just a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
In Maya, under the Arnold subdivisions, the iterations that you had your model set on 4.
Yes.
Right. Is that a direct translation to ZBrush's subdivisions? Because theoretically, it'll be like a number like 6 or almost 7 to have all the detail, right?
Yeah, the thing is like to recover all the detail as displacement map, yeah, you would have to have like a very high number. And the thing is, like, I did a few tests, like in one of the previous classes, rendering with subdivision level 3, and then 4, and then 5. And for close-ups, it really makes a difference, you know. It's like, because it really recovers that form very beautifully. Subdivision level 5 to me is the one that gave me the best result. But like you said, I mean, like, to recover the HD stuff, you would have to go like the subdivision much higher than that. But that's when we used the auto bump.
The apply as bump, right?
Yeah. So basically,
because it was just crashing for me once I tried to put it beyond 4.
Yeah.
Just like, nah, don't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the auto bump basically is going to shift all the next subdivisions, right? Like to a bump map, basically. That's how we got. Yeah, that's how we get all the detail, because otherwise it would be crazy to render. I think like after 5, even at 5, sometimes it crashes for me. But like I would say 6 is most certainly is gonna crash for me. But 5, I think you worked before. But yeah. So check this out.
I was just making sure that the math it makes sense. It's just like something that Maya would need a lot of memory to handle.
Oh yeah. No, it's correct. Yep. So check this out. If I click my model now, it doesn't do anything, right? Now I'm gonna spin around. Look, now it shows the selection. That's basically what it's doing at this point. So I'm gonna have to reset my Maya, because that's what it's doing with the hair at this point too. And normally it takes hours to get into this weird state, but it didn't take too long this time, you know. All right, I'm gonna save it and reopen it. Thanks again, guys, and I see you tomorrow.
Cheers. See ya.
Cheers.
Okay, bye, Chris.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. All righty.